how would I, let's talk about me first of all. I'm burning out. How would I recognize that it's not just busy stress, but actually I'm burning out?
Yeah. So aside from the physical effects, getting ill, getting headaches, there are three kind of criteria for having burnt out. And it's called the Maslow burnout inventory, I think.
Okay.
Basically, those three things are exhaustion, as in physical exhaustion, just being knackered all the time,
Yeah.
self-inefficacy.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, feeling that you're never going to actually perform in some of the projects or the things that you're working on, and then cynicism. And that third one is where I coach most people to
So
watch
when
out.
could you just explain what you mean by cynicism? Is it cynical of the business and the company, or is it cynical of yourself?
All of the above, just general cynicism. I don't care anymore, essentially.
Okay. Yeah.
So in my case, that was the biggest indicator that I noticed. I was just where I'd been very proud of the company I was working in and proud of my position, big ego stroke. I suddenly just stopped caring. And I didn't care about the quality of my work. I didn't care about the success of the company, and I didn't care about my personal relationships. I had reached the end of my ego reserves. And I just stopped
Right.
caring about it. There is
Your
there is
ego
a,
reserves.
there is
Yeah.
a technical term, ego depletion, which is
Okay.
where essentially they presume that you have a certain amount of willpower and ability to talk yourself out of negativity and that sort of stuff. And as you become more and more stressed, as you become more and more exhausted, that ego pool kind of drops and drops. And when you run out, you just stop caring about stuff, basically. And you don't have decision making powers. You don't have the ability to resolve arguments. You don't have the ability to push back on extra demands on your time. So I think all of that goes hand in hand. But seeing people in my teams who have suddenly become cynical and not responding well to being asked for stuff, that's an immediate indicator. And
Mm-hmm.
it's much easier to spot than the exhaustion or the self-inefficacy, because you don't know what's going on in someone's head.
Yeah.
You don't know if they're thinking to themselves, God, I'm never going to get this right, unless they tell you, unless they're vulnerable and they tell you.
Yeah. And as a leader, um, when you're, I guess, demonstrating that lack of caring and enthusiasm and cynicism, I would imagine that makes it okay for other people around you to also be equally cynical. So it's almost
Absolutely.
like an infectious disease, right?
And that's absolutely right. Yeah. And it can be existential for a business. I've coached founders who have had this happen, where either they or their CTO has become burnt out, and it has just cascaded often pretty quickly, in a matter of weeks or months.
Mm.
And the whole company has just been this mess of people who are just not talking to each other and don't really care. They're just coming in to cash a paycheck and all the
Hmm.
above. But yeah, it spreads like wildfire.
And then if I'm not burning out, I'm okay, but what signs do I look for in other people that I should be worried and sort of, tap them on the shoulder or do something and say, are you okay?
So cynicism, as I say, it's the first thing I always look at. Are they becoming snappy? Are they pushing back on demands on their time? It can also be quite easy to spot when someone is exhausted. They arrive late for things, or they can't really get their thoughts together when they're in meetings, that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. So those are the things I typically look out for, first of all. But cynicism is the easiest thing to spot out of those three, for sure.
Cool. So we can now begin to recognize that somebody is burning out or that I am burning out. Stage two is immediate steps. So
Mhm.
I reached this point where I thought, wow, I'm burning out. What's the first thing, sort of 24 to 48 hours, immediate. What are the first things that I should do?
Talk to people. So the immediate thing you should do is share it. In my opinion, that's typically what I advise people to do. They need to talk to the people that it will affect. but also the people who are affecting the level of burnout that they're facing. And it might be that they need to take time away, it might not, but at the very least they need to communicate about it. They need to make sure other people know, because those people might be able to help, might be able to just understand a little bit more. But also, as we said earlier on, if you open up about this stuff, then it shows to the rest of the team and the rest of the company that it's okay to talk about this stuff, which is super, super important.
But I'd imagine if you're at that low ebb and you're feeling worthless and inefficient and all of the things that you've described, and I've been there as well. I've been there. I recognise exactly what you're saying. There is a fear, isn't there, that if you put your hand up and say, "Look, I'm not being efficient. I'm not operating as I normally do. I'm not feeling good." Because of your ego depletion that you talked about, you're so low. You just assume they're going to say, well, off you go, we'll find somebody else. And does that not prevent you from coming forward? Yeah, that risk, that fear of failure.
Yeah, it does in a lot of people's cases. Where the burnout leads to them having to disappear and then take a lot of time to reconnect themselves in a way. That's typically what's happened. They just haven't had the confidence that they could talk to the right people about it. And sometimes they talk to the wrong people about it and they don't help, so those people certainly exist as well. But to avoid having to get to that point of leaving a company and, taking time away, prolonged time in some cases like me, you have to have the courage to tell people. You have to be able to tell people how close you are to needing to drop out altogether. Yeah.
So I understand that a person can recognize that they are burning out, or somebody can tap them on the shoulder and help them understand they're burning out, and that person can begin to process it. What can the organization do? Because maybe it's cultural or systemic. It's something in the organization. Everyone is burning out because of the way it's set up. What can a CEO, for example, do to say, wow, all of my people are burning out and this is not healthy? What can they do in that first 24 to 48 hours?
Yeah, that's really tough. I don't think there is enough they can do in 24 to 48 hours to kind of stem that, other than stand up and explain to everyone that they recognize that it's happening. So at least people understand that it's a known problem, and hopefully there is enough trust left in the team that they trust the founder or the CEO to kind of fix things. But that's a really difficult one. But over a longer period of time, building that trust, building that culture of psychological safety, what's the word I'm looking for? Displaying vulnerability and giving them an example of how you would come forward about feeling some of these things. Those are really important for a founder, I think, or a CEO or a CTO or anyone. You have to kind of pave the way and show them how it's done.
And how do they? Let's just say that there's a CTO who comes forward and says, "I'm burning out. I need time out." So they go off for a period of time. We don't know how long it's going to be, but they do that on a Wednesday, and on the Thursday morning they're not there. How does the leadership convey that to everybody else without calling them out and making an example of them, or you're making it worse for that individual?
It's really tough. I think that's dependent on the culture that already exists in the company. If it's already a generative environment where people talk about stuff like mental health and psychological safety and burnout, then I think it's reasonable to say, look, Andy's had a really bad time over the last few months. He needs some time away to take care of himself, but then he's going to come back and he's looking forward to coming back and continuing the good fight. I think there are certainly cultures where you couldn't do that, and you would have to be a little bit more subtle and say, there's a health problem or there's a family emergency, both of which are true, right? But not completely truthful. And maybe soften it a little bit.
Yeah, but I'm hearing protect the person. Don't expose them and say Andy's burned out, he's flopped, he's off. He couldn't hack it. We're going to carry on, but you must protect the person, right?
Yeah, I think as a CTO, if someone in your team had burnt out and needs to leave, I don't think you'd go to the other engineers and say, right, it was too much for him, and he's disappeared. Might come back, might not. You have to be a little bit more humane than that, I think. And
Yeah,
you'd expect that from other C-level people with the CTO if it's the CTO burning out. Unfortunately, that culture doesn't exist universally. And
yeah.
yeah,